mean, that's the thing. The food is made hyper addictive. There's a book called The Dorito Effect, in which they use logarithmic changes in the flavoring in the Dorito bag. So there's at least 12 to 17 varieties of flavor in a bag of Doritos. They're not like giving you a bag of Doritos with one flavor. What they've done is they know that you have sensory specific satiety, and each time they titillate your taste bud with a slightly different flavor that appearingly looks the same, but it revitalizes your tongue, and your tongue goes, hey, I'm hungrier than I was because I just had a different flavor profile and I never got satiety for this flavor profile. And then all of a sudden you've got another Dorito coming and that has a slightly different flavor profile. And you don't realize that they're doing that.
Wow.
And they're spending a lot of money doing it. It's to the point where, I'll give you another example. So this is an agricultural phenomenon. When we got rid of cigarettes in the United States, a lot of those people, or when we started to decrease the use of cigarettes in the United States through lawsuits, a lot of these cigarette scientists moved over to the food world, and so they already brought with them the ability to understand how addiction works, and so they understood the concept of satiety. They understood all of these other things, and they applied it to food. Now, let me give you a concrete example that doesn't make sense at first because you go, why would they do that? So let's talk about high fructose corn syrup and soda, sugar-sweetened beverages. So normally, if you have table sugar, 50% of table sugar is a disaccharide, so 50% of table sugar is glucose and 50% of table sugar is fructose. It seems reasonable. Glucose is the thing that we normally think about as sugar, but table sugar is both. It's fructose and glucose. We historically think that people might overdose or overuse sugar, and we know in rat studies that rats prefer sugar over cocaine as in terms of water, and we know that rats will preferentially take cocaine. Will take the sugar before they'll take the cocaine. They will deplete the sugar bottle, and then as a secondary resort, will go over to the cocaine. They like the sugar much better. Even though, and we know that the dopamine release in their brain is greater for the sugars than it is for the cocaine. We've done studies on the nucleus accumbens. And you can measure the dopamine in their brain in the release, and you can look at their behavior, and you can see that these rats like this sugar better than cocaine. In fact, it's up there with them liking other things like sex and things of that nature, and methamphetamine. And there are different scales of drug. So we know that they like that. Now let's go back to sugar-sweetened beverages. If I was making a sugar-sweetened beverage, I would use a sugar. I'd put it in there, and it'd be 50% fructose and 50% glucose. But that's not what it is. They use sugar-sweetened beverages, and they use high fructose corn syrup. Okay, well, you might think they use high fructose corn syrup because there's a subsidy in the United States to produce corn, and maybe they're getting that high fructose corn syrup cheaper. So that should be 55% fructose, 45% glucose. Well, that's what it is, right? No, that's not what it is. They're spending extra money taking the high fructose corn syrup, refining it even further, and getting 60 to 65% fructose. Why are they doing that? Why are they spending extra money to hyper-refine it so it's even more fructose? The reason why is there's a greater dopamine release. And what happens is, when you get up to 60-65% fructose, it's the equivalent of smoking cigarettes. You Jones for it 15 minutes after you finished it. And you go, I got another sip of soda. We've supersized the sodas. We've made them gigantic. So we're constantly self-dosing this dopamine release. And then we're looking around for our next dopamine hit because all of a sudden we've Jonesed. We've gone into withdrawal from a fructose withdrawal, and which was activating our dopamine. And the companies know that. So they've spent extra money just to give us that extra fructose. A similar thing with vegetable oil. There's compounds in vegetable oil that break down and they activate the anandamide system. And so we know that vegetable oil, when it's been oxidized with fluorescent light, when it's been oxidized by heating, breaks down, and it creates a polyunsaturated fatty acid that is highly oxidized and very toxic to our cells. We know that it's more addictive. And that's why when you look at processed food in the United States, it has a ton of sugar, especially fructose, and it has a ton of vegetable oil. The two of those together, though, cause problems, and they cause severe insulin resistance, and they cause diabetes.